Hello my friends, Hank here, and today we're going to be looking at some of the biggest scale model manufacturers on the market today. It seems like every year we're getting hundreds and hundreds of new kits hitting the market from dozens of scale model manufacturers, and that can make it really tricky to pick the next kit for you based on your skill level and the kind of experience you're looking for. So today we're going to break down some of the most common manufacturers on the market, what to expect from their kits based on a couple of key factors. So the next time you go to buy a scale model kit, you'll have the information you need to make the right decision. So if that sounds good to you, let's hop right into it. So before we get started here, let's just take a little look at our chart so we understand kind of what the factors are that we're evaluating today. So we have two axes here. We have a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. Our horizontal axis is going to go from easy builds to challenging builds. So what qualifies as an easy build? So we're looking at kits that have simple to follow instructions. So you're not getting confused looking at the instruction booklet. You have a very good sense of what's going on and what's expected from the manufacturer to get to the finished product. These are also kits that go together as expected. Now that might seem like a given, but that's not always the case in this hobby. So what we're talking about here are model kits that go together without too much fuss. You don't have to do a lot of sanding, you don't have to do a lot of filling. They go together smoothly and it's a nice casual build. A hard build or challenging build over on the right side here is either gonna fall into probably two different categories to make it a challenging build. It's either gonna have difficult to follow instructions, so it might not be super clear how you're supposed to proceed through the build process, or it can just be a complicated kit with really small fiddly sub-assemblies, a lot of detail packed into a small area, and it's complicated to put together. Or sometimes it's both of those things. Not always a bad thing, but these are more complicated kits. They're not the best for beginners. So our vertical axis is going to go from high part counts to low part counts. Pretty self-explanatory. A high part count is a very busy kit. A lot of pieces in the kit, a lot of pieces in each little sub-assembly, and these are generally going to take a longer time to build. So this is a more drawn-out build process. Whereas a low part count kit is going to be the exact opposite. Not a ton of parts, and generally speaking, this is going to be a faster build. So those are the two rating scales that we're going to be evaluating these model manufacturers on today. And obviously, it goes without saying, we're making some generalizations here. Within each model manufacturer, there are going to be kits that are really easy to build and really hard to build, or have a lot of parts and not a lot of parts. But what we're looking at today is the general vibe of what to expect from these model manufacturers. So you'll kind of understand what I'm saying as we go along here. And the model kits, or the model manufacturers that you see over in our little pool here, our little bank, like I mentioned in the intro, are some of the biggest model manufacturers on the market today. There are going to be some that you probably know that you don't see on here, which is okay. I just tried to get the big ones in here. But if I'm missing any and you're curious to hear what I think about them, make sure to leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So the first brand we're going to look at today, going in alphabetical order, is going to be Academy. So we're going to pull Academy over here and just drop them right in the center for now. Now, what I'm going to do as we go along here, I'm just going to flash up a little screenshot of a glimpse of the instruction booklet from one of the recent releases from each of these companies, just so we can get an idea of what the instructions look like, kind of what the part count and general assembly looks like, just to give us a glimpse of what to expect. So this is a 1/48 scale aircraft kit from Academy. And you can see not a very complicated cockpit here, especially at 1/48 scale. But the instructions are clear. It seems like everything has a well thought out place to fit together. But it's not super crisp. It's not like the most clear that we've seen or that we will see as we go along here in some of our instruction booklets, but relatively simple. So in my experience, Academy kits, we're going to hide this here so we can actually see what we're doing. Academy kits go together pretty simply. I've never really had too much trouble with Academy kits. Sometimes they need a little cleanup, but nothing too crazy. So I'm going to put them over here on the easy build side of the spectrum. And as we just saw in our little glimpse of the instruction booklet, they generally have relatively low part count. So I'm going to put them down here in the bottom left quadrant of our graph, and we might move this around as we go along here, but generally speaking, Academy model kits, relatively easy build, relatively low part count. So good option for beginners or somebody that's more experienced looking for kind of a casual build. Moving on to our next brand here, we have Airfix. Airfix has been around for a while. They're a very well-known 148 and 172 scale aircraft manufacturer, scale model aircraft manufacturer. We'll flash up a little screenshot from one of their recent instruction booklets. As you can see here, really nice color, clear instructions. Some smaller, more detailed parts than we saw with our Academy kit, but still nothing too crazy. Like you can see with these flaps here, they're pretty I don't know if these are air brakes, I'm sorry. But these small sub-assembly pieces here, relatively big parts, but we've got some, small little actuators and levers and stuff that we need to put in there. But nothing too crazy. So in my experience, Airfix kits also pretty easy to build. I'm gonna put them over here. I'd say they're a little bit more complicated than Academy kits, so I'll put them a little bit closer to challenging build, but I don't think they're too bad at all. They do have slightly higher part counts though, so I'm gonna put them up here actually in our top left quadrant. When you build Airfix kits, depending on the scale, obviously, and how big the aircraft itself might be, you're probably gonna get some more parts, a little bit more detail in those fine little design elements of the aircraft. So I'm gonna put them up here in our top left, like I said. Slightly higher part count, definitely higher part count than the Academy kits, but they're still very easy to build. All right, moving on here to Asuka. A lot of people pronounce this Asuka. I had to check it out myself because I needed to verify because a lot of people said it, but apparently the correct Japanese pronunciation is Asuka. So I will refer to them as Asuka. Asuka makes some fantastic 135 scale armor kits. I love their Sherman series, but they are pretty complicated kits. They're definitely more challenging to build than Airfix kits and Academy kits. A lot of parts here too. So I'm gonna bump these up here into the high part count. Let me show you a little screenshot from an Asuka build. As you can see here, this is the bogie assembly for an M4 Sherman kit, and there's a lot that goes into these bogies. They're all moving bogie assemblies, which multiply that by 6, or if it's a different vehicle, obviously, whatever the situation might be there. It's a slower build. There's a lot going into it, but they do fit together really, really well. So not a lot of fuss as far as cleanup and difficult work you have to do, but it's a slow build with a lot of parts. You got to pay attention to make sure you get that detail right, but it pays off in the end. So I'm going to put Asuka over here in our challenging build and high part count section. If you haven't built an Asuka kit before, they're a blast to do, but they're definitely not for beginners. So I would say, based on the companies that we've ranked so far, Airfix and Academy, a little bit better for beginners. Asuka, a little bit more challenging. So Asuka models, there you go. They're over in our high part count, challenging build section. Border Model, moving on here. Relatively new company, Border Model. I've just released some news videos about Border Model. They're coming out with some fantastic stuff lately, but great addition to the scale modeling landscape here. I'll flash up a screenshot here of a border kit. As you can see, a lot going into this. Many of these Border Model kits have full interiors, and they're super fiddly, delicate little parts, but there's a ton of detail packed into these. So I will say, these are challenging builds. I'm going to put them over a little bit further even than Asuka model, just because there's so much going into it. But they do go together very well. The engineering, the design is great, but there's just a lot going into it. These are not beginner-friendly kits, so definitely have some experience under your belt before you tackle one of these, but it's going to pay off. And as you can see, very high part count here. So we're going to put them a little bit higher on the part count scale than Asuka, and probably a little bit more challenging than Asuka as well. And I'm just realizing that I covered that whole thing up the whole time. I'm sorry about that. The Border Model over here, like I said, high part count, a little bit higher than Asuka, definitely higher than Airfix and Academy, and a little more challenging than everybody we've ranked so far. But I will say my experience with Border Model kits, I do really like them, but not for the faint of heart. They are time consuming, and they'll pay off in the end. They're quite fun kits, but they're difficult. All right, moving on. Dragon. So Dragon has seemingly a lot of model kits out on the market now. They've been around for a while. And I will say right off the bat here, I'm not a huge fan of dragon kits. I haven't had great experiences with dragon kits, unfortunately. And I hate to say that, but that's the truth. So I'm going to flash up some of the instructions here from a recent dragon kit. This is one of their Tiger 1 kits. As you can see, a lot going on here. These are difficult builds. They often come with photo etch and a lot of parts into each one of these sub-assemblies. You can see like even the jack here over on the left side of the instruction sheet, ton of parts that go into that. On some other more beginner-friendly model manufacturers, that jack might be 2 pieces, maybe 3. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like, and some photo etch. A lot going into that. So, a lot of parts there. The thing that kind of hurts the Dragon experience for me is that I feel like the kits don't go together that well. I've had some problems with the engineering. So I'm going to put these over here, Dragon over here, on challenging build. Probably a little bit further than border maybe. And also a very high part count. I'm going to put them up here. Now, border and Asuka are both in the challenging build section because I think they're complicated kits. Dragon's over in the challenging build section, yes, because it's also they're challenging kits, but they also don't go together super, super well. They have some fantastic offerings, and obviously there's a ton of detail there, but you're going to have to put your work in, and you're going to have some more developed modeling skills up your sleeve to figure out how to put these together and get a good finished product. So Dragon right now, high part count, challenging build. We're going to put it all the way over on the top right here. Moving on. Eduard. Eduard makes some wonderful aircraft kits. Let me pop up an example here. And as you can see, this is another cockpit. Compare this to our Academy kit. Ton of parts here. You can see all these PE11, PE13, PE7 up on the top left there. There's a ton of photo etch involved here if you want to use photo etch. And just a lot of detail packed into these cockpits. That's a general thing to expect from Eduard. They're tough kits to put together just because there's a lot of parts, but they go together very well. They're smooth builds, but there's a lot involved. There's a lot there's a lot that comes with that kit that you have to be ready to work on. If you want just a quick slam together aircraft model, Eduard is not the way to go. If you want something with a ton of detail that's going to look fantastic when it's done, but it's probably going to take you a long time and you have to really go slow on it, Eduard's for you. So challenging build, I'm going to put them like right in the middle of the pack here, kind of where we have Asuka. And I'm going to put them up here around the same place with our part count. I'll move border up a little bit just for reference here. But Eduard and Asuka, similar place with part count. Eduard might be a little bit higher than Asuka. They could go back and forth depending on the kit or the day, I suppose. But generally speaking, they're in the high part count, challenging build territory. Some great stuff from Eduard. I've liked all the builds I've done by them. But that's a good spot for him, I think. All right, moving on. Hobby Boss. So Hobby Boss is a mixed bag, in my opinion. Here is an example from a relatively recent Hobby Boss kit, an armor kit. As you can see, some big parts here. This upper hull is one big piece for the most part, and we have a more simple assembly than we saw with some of our other armor kits. Still a lot of pieces, for example, in this jack here on the top left, but just, sandwiched together, put the ends on, nothing too crazy. In my experience, Hobby Boss kits go together quite well. I haven't had too much problem. Sometimes they need a little bit of sanding or a little bit of filling, but nothing too bad. But the part count is definitely lower than, some of these other big AFV manufacturers like Border or Dragon or Asuka. So I'm going to put them over here in the easy build section with low part counts. They have a slightly higher part count than Academy, and they probably have a little bit more difficulty going together. So I'm going to put them up here to the right of Academy a little bit. So still in the easy build category, still in the low part count category, but maybe a little bit more to them than Academy kits, for example. So I really like Hobby Boss kits. I think they are good beginner options. Maybe not for your first kit or your second kit, but if you're looking to explore some new brands, Hobby Boss can be a fun one if you're still developing your skills as a scale modeler. So Hobby Boss down here on our bottom left, easier build, lower part count. ICM is our next one. So ICM kits. Here's an example of one of their recent helicopter releases in 135 scale actually. As you can see here, very clear instructions, relatively large parts in these sub-assemblies. It is 135 scale, mind you, but sometimes with model manufacturers, you see a lot more little parts within each sub-assembly. ICM kind of cuts out some of that process with bigger kits, but they do have a ton of detail. I will say, so ICM kits, they're kind of right in the middle of the pack for difficulty. I'd say they're on the easier side, so we'll put them right around here. Probably on par with Airfix difficulty-wise on the easy to challenging spectrum. As far as part count, though, they're a little bit lower. I'd say probably down here even with Hobby Boss as far as part count is concerned. So I'm going to put ICM down here in our bottom left section as well, our bottom left quadrant. Easy builds, maybe a little bit more difficult than a Hobby Boss kit, just slightly. And definitely a little bit more to it than an Academy kit, but still low part count, pretty beginner friendly, and I think they're doing some great stuff over at ICM. So that's where we're going to put them, down there. And I'm realizing again that I covered that up the whole time, so sorry about that, folks. So ICM I have over here, like we said, left side, bottom left quadrant, over here by Hobby Boss. A little bit more challenging maybe than Hobby Boss, definitely than Academy. Kind of on par with Airfix here, but on the lower part count side of things. So ICM, pretty beginner-friendly kits. I really like what they're doing over there. I'd recommend them to folks. Again, maybe not for your very first kit, but they're doing some great stuff. So watch out for ICM, especially if you're in the newer section, the newer process of your building journey here, so to speak. But ICM, bottom left quadrant, easier build, lower part count. Moving on, Italeri. Italeri is one of those, I feel like, beginner manufacturers that a lot of people know, for better or for worse. But you know what? We gotta love Italeri. They're doing some good stuff. So here's an example of an Italeri kit. Right off the bat here, this is an M1 Abrams. Very simple. You can see the instructions are very simple, and the assembly is very simple as well. Not that that's always a bad thing. So I will say, they're in the easier build side of things, but sometimes they don't go together fantastic. You got to kind of clean them up a little bit to get a good finished product. So I'm going to put them over here with Hobby Boss and Academy in this general area. They need a little more cleanup than Academy, so I'll put them a little bit further to the right. But they have very low part count. So I'm going to put them down here towards like the bottom of low part count. They're very, very simple kits. And you know what? I'm going to put them all the way down here for now. So to date, out of all the stuff we've covered so far, these are by far the simplest part count kits. And they're relatively easy to build with the exception of, by the very nature of how simple the parts are, how big and kind of blocky the parts are to go together, and how simple those instructions are. They're still easy, but they're definitely on the lower part count side of things. They're pretty affordable kits too. So if you're looking to maybe for your very first kit, Italeri is not a bad choice. The engineering isn't great. You have to be, like I've kind of hinted at, you have to be patient with them. But you can make something that looks pretty nice even if you don't have a ton of skills in the hobby yet. And if you're a more experienced builder and you just want something kind of casual to throw together, Italeri can be there for you. Not my favorite brand, like I said, because they're a little bit more janky design-wise, but that's okay. So Italeri down here, joining Academy, Hobby Boss, and ICM in our bottom left quadrant. All right, so that was our first side here. We got all the leftmost list of manufacturers done here. So moving over to our top right, we're going to do MasterBox. So MasterBox, let's pull up a screenshot of a MasterBox kit. MasterBox, I think, exclusively does figures. They might have some vehicles, I'm not actually sure, but mostly figure kits in a wide variety of offerings here. Some modern stuff, some World War II era stuff, I think some World War I era stuff too. Cold Warrior as well. Some good kits. I don't think they go together super well, and I think the scale is probably a little too big. These are almost, I think, all in 135 scale, but once you put them next to most 135 scale vehicles, they seem a little big. But I will say they go together quite easy. So I'm going to put them over here in easy build because they're small kits, as figure kits by the very nature of that. There's not a ton of parts here. You could throw all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, I don't know, however many guys are in this kit. You could throw them together pretty quickly. I'll hide this now so you can see. You can throw them together pretty quickly. There's not a ton of parts there. So we'll move MasterBox over here on the easy build side of things. They also have very low part counts by the very nature of being figure kits. So they're going to go down here with Italeri. Low part counts, easy build. Take that for what it is. Like I said, I think they're pretty good beginner figure kits because they're simple to throw together. I don't think they have a ton of detail, and they won't really hold up to the scrutiny of a more complicated, really well executed, crisp manufacturer's kit. But they're great for what they are. So MasterBox figures, they're going to be easy build section, low part count. Meng, moving on to Meng. So that is going to be quite different from MasterBox. Meng kits, let's pull up a picture. Meng kits are relatively new, I think, in the whole scheme of things in the industry, but they're quite detailed, and they have a great variety of mostly, I think, 135 scale AFVs, and some full interior kits. They pack quite a bit of detail. And as such, they're more difficult kits to build. I'd probably put them over here, let's see, roughly with, on tier with Border Model, because they go together well. The engineering is very good. And they do have relatively high part counts, but not as high as definitely as Border or Dragon. We'll put them over here generally with like Asuka. But I've been very impressed with the engineering from Meng. I think they go together very well. And they've made a solid name for themselves in the whole realm of scale modeling. So Meng I'm going to put over here in our top right. Probably a little more challenging than an Asuka kit. Maybe not. I'm going to put him maybe on par here. Yeah, because Asuka probably has a little bit more, or a little bit higher part count. So I'm going to put him just below Asuka here. Relatively challenging build compared to some of our other model manufacturers, especially our chunk down here in the bottom left. But they still go together rather well. So we're not all the way over here on the right with like Dragon. And kind of a middle of the road part count. If you don't get a full interior kit, still a lot of detail, but the parts aren't bananas. So we're going to put them over here. Probably slightly smaller part count than Asuka, but on par with Eduard and Asuka over there. So that's Meng. MiniArt. All right, MiniArt. Popping them right in the middle. I feel like MiniArt is just cranking out kits on the daily, it seems like. It's crazy. I feel like every time I'm on social media, I see new kits from MiniArt. So here is an example of a MiniArt kit. This is one of their recent Stug releases in 135 scale. As you can see, a lot of parts here. So we're going to slide right up the high part count side of things. Probably up by Border, or even by Dragon. But I think they have a good design going on here. They're going to be a little bit more challenging just because of the part count, but I think they go together pretty well, comparatively speaking. They're kind of in this same little tier here with Eduard, Asuka, Meng. Maybe a little bit more challenging, closer to Border, just because of how many parts there are, but a ton of detail here. Many of the kits come with photo etch, but like very small little sub-assemblies for maybe like the engine of, like they have a lot of truck kits that come out, a lot of civilian trucks, delivery trucks and stuff like that. And they have like full engine detail. You can position the hood like up or down, all sorts of stuff like that. But MiniArt does some great stuff. And you know what I will say? They do have a lot of great figure kits too, so I'm going to bump them slightly over towards easier build just because of the variety. But just be careful with MiniArt if you're a newer builder. They're not, like, their vehicle kits are not great options for beginners by any means because they have a lot of parts. But some of their figure kits are great. They can be really fun little simple figure kits. So check them out. If you're a newer modeler, and you need some figures, MiniArt can be a great option. But I wouldn't recommend, if you're a true novice, picking up a MiniArt kit, like a vehicle kit, because it's a bit of a slog. It's an undertaking. Slog's not the right word. It's an undertaking because there's a lot to them. So we're going to put MiniArt over here on our top right with Eduard, Asuka, Meng. Slightly easier build, maybe. I'm gonna, just because we said with the figures, sometimes they're a little bit easier, but very high part count as well. Okay, moving on. Revell, good old Revell. Revell's been around forever. I feel like everybody has made a Revell kit. Well, if you're a brand new modeler, you probably haven't, but Revell kits have been around forever. My very, very first kit, way back when, was a Revell B17 that my dad helped me build, similar to the one that I have on the wall here. But Revell makes some great stuff. They might not stand up to some of the engineering from the newer model manufacturers, but we do love Revell. So here is a picture of one of Revell's new 148 scale B24 Liberator kits. As you can see, quite simple here. Just two big halves. This is a little bit further down. This is steps 26 through 28. But you can see we've got two big halves of the main fuselage that just sandwich together like that. So nothing too crazy. And then you can see kind of the reason I picked this screenshot. Steps 27 and 28, you can see the engine detailing is just like one big piece in step 27 there. And then the wings are just top and bottom sandwich halves like that. So Revell, assembly-wise, definitely down here in the easy build section. And they have low part counts. So I'm going to throw them down here with Italeri, MasterBox, and all those guys. They do need a little bit more cleanup, so I'm going to slide them over here to challenging build, just because they're often older molds, like you saw with that engine cowling there, or the engine guts themselves on that B24. Really simple parts. Sometimes you have to clean them up to make them look and fit great. But Revell's down here in our easier category. Decent beginner kit offering, and a relatively low part count. So that's where we'll put Revell, down there with Italeri and MasterBox. I think that's a fair spot for Revell. All right, moving on. Rye Field Model, RFM. Rye Field Model, I think relatively new on the whole scale modeling landscape here, but they're doing some great stuff once again. Some full interior kits, mostly 135 scale armor kits coming from RFM. Quite detailed little kits here. You can see this is the engine deck of a German tank here, and we've got some photo etch. We've got some very delicate little parts. You can see just like the straps and stuff holding down the pioneering tools on the top deck here. Very delicate little bits, but a ton of detail here, and can give a more experienced builder a lot of options to make something really special. Excuse me. So RFM, I'm going to put over here, Rye Field, challenging build, because there's a lot of parts, and there are a lot of little delicate parts, and a lot of really well executed work has to be done with photo etch, etc., to make these come out great. So definitely not beginner friendly. And they do have quite high part counts. So I'm going to bump Dragon up a little bit and put Rye Field in this general area with border. I'll scoot them down a little bit just so we can see. But Rye Field, high part count, challenging build. Not for the faint of heart, not for the beginner modeler, but you can do some fantastic stuff with these guys. So we're going to put them over there. And you can see we've kind of got a nice little trend here going right in the middle. Difficult high part count kits and easier low part count kits. And we only have 4 manufacturers left. So let's keep going here, and we're going to throw in our next brand, Takom. Takom, kind of similar to our top right guys here. So let's look at Takom a little bit. Here is an example of a Takom kit. This is a full interior Panther kit, and oh my goodness, look at all the parts in there. These are quite complicated little kits. Not little kits. That's a 135 scale kit, but challenging build. We're way over here on the right. You know, we're up, I think, even more so than Dragon. We're like off the map here. A lot of parts go into these Takom kits, and they can be quite difficult kits. I think they go together pretty well, but there's just a lot to them. If you're a beginner, if you have made fewer than 20 models, don't pick up a Takom kit. They're complicated. Don't pick up like any of these top right kits here if you're still have fewer than 10 models under your belt. These are complicated kits, but they can do some fantastic stuff. I've seen some like top tier modelers out there make some phenomenal builds with Takom kits. So I'm going to put them over here on our top right now. You know what? Maybe a little less challenging than Dragon, just because Dragon, like I said, is just kind of janky to put together. I haven't had great experiences with how smooth those kits go together. So I'm going to put Takom over here, generally speaking, with Dragon and Rye Field. Very high part count, challenging builds, but great results if you know what you're doing. So that's where we've got Takom. Tamiya, good old Tamiya. I love Tamiya. In my experience, Tamiya, generally speaking, some of the easiest kits to build. I love Tamiya kits. I would recommend Tamiya kits to anyone. I think if you are going to build your very first scale model kit, build a Tamiya kit. There is a spectrum within Tamiya, we have to say. Some Tamiya kits more complicated, some Tamiya kits less complicated, but generally speaking, the engineering is second to none. I think I've never really had problems. I don't think I've ever really had problems at all putting together a Tamiya kit. The instructions are very clear. They have great guidelines and guide holes and stuff to make sure that the parts go together. There's usually only one way to put them together correctly, so it's pretty difficult to make mistakes with Tamiya kits. I'll show an example of Tamiya instruction manual. This is from one of their newest 135 scale kits. Pretty solid level of detail here too, and a decent amount of parts, but these go together really well. I can't say enough about the engineering of Tamiya kits, so they're definitely over here in the easy build category. And they sometimes have higher part counts. So I'm going to put them like sort of up here in the top left. Easy builds from Tamiya. I think they're wonderful beginner-friendly kits. Some of them have a little more to them, so they take a little bit longer, but not nearly as high part counts as, any of these other guys we have over here. So I'll put them a little lower because we don't want them up there with Meng and Asuka and everything. But great stuff from Tamiya. So they're going to be in our top left quadrant. Easy to build, very beginner-friendly kits, moderate part count, but can't say enough about Tamiya. I love them. They do some wonderful stuff. All right, our last two home stretch here. Trumpeter. Trumpeter is kind of a mixed bag for me too. Here's an example of a Trumpeter kit. This is an engine interior, and I don't actually remember what kit this was from, what I took the screenshot from, but one of their newer kits here. Trumpeter, a lot of parts. As you can see, this is a very complicated subassembly for just an engine, and challenging build. So I'm going to put them up here with, you know what? They're going to be over here with Dragon, because I think they have a lot of parts, and they don't always go together super well. I've had some Trumpeter kits that are easy to build. They fall together, without too much fuss at all. But you generally have to know what you're doing, and sometimes you have to finagle the parts a little bit to get everything to go together right. So not the easiest kits to make, and they do have a ton of parts, as you can see here. Sorry, I covered that up again when I was moving that here, but we have Trumpeter over here on the top right, roughly by Rye Field and Dragon. I think that's a fair spot for them. So yeah, Trumpeter, complicated kits. Definitely not for beginners. Pretty high part count across the board on all those, and I think that's a fair spot for them. So let's get our last one on the board here, and then see if we need to make any adjustments. So last model manufacturer is Zvezda, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Zvezda's got some good stuff out there, and they're actually a decent beginner offering. I'd say they're easier kits to build, and generally lower part count. I'm going to slide them over here, sort of by Hobby Boss and ICM. Simple, you know what? No, they definitely have fewer parts than these guys. So we'll put them down here with Revell, I'd say. We'll switch. We'll go Zvezda here, Revell there. Easy to build for the most part, and low part counts. It's a great value play as well. They're not super expensive kits from my experience, but they go together well, and they have some unique offerings. I would say if you have the choice between maybe a Tamiya kit or an ICM kit of the same subject, I would go with those instead. But I think Zvezda does some good stuff. So we'll have Zvezda down here in the bottom left category. So here is our spectrum so far of, our spectrum with everything on the map here. Interesting to note, as you can see, and I was doing this live, I didn't do this ahead of time because I wanted to kind of think through these with you guys. We don't have anything in our low part count challenging build section. And I think that's because generally, like, it's kind of hard to have a really simple kit that just is difficult. I don't know. Maybe like Italeri, we're going to slide a little bit more towards challenging build just because they don't always go together fantastic. Revell we'll put over here too. You know, we're going to put Revell and Italeri closer to the middle here. Just because Revell might actually slide into challenging a little bit. I'm kind of backtracking on what I said before. But that's all part of this process. We have to iron things out here as we go along and just rate them according to the rest of the ecosystem of models out there. But the reason I slid Revell and Italeri over here a little bit is because sometimes, since the engineering is pretty simple, you have to do a little bit of work to make them look good and make them fall together the right way. So we'll cheat them over there a little bit. ICM, you know what? I'm gonna slide that closer to the line as well. We're gonna cheat everybody over here. Well, ICM and Hobby Boss a little bit closer to the middle, I'd say. I think that's a fair spot for them. Yeah, that's good. Up in our top left, easy builds, high part count. Tamiya and Airfix, I think they're two industry leaders up there. ICM, you know what? I might cheat up a little bit closer to there. I think that's a fair spot for them. Because the engineering on these three brands, ICM, Airfix, Tamiya, all very good. But, you know, slightly lower part count, so they're definitely still manageable. I'm going to put ICM closer to the line here. And move Airfix up a little bit. But I think very user-friendly in the whole scheme of things. But in our low part count easy build, our bottom left here, MasterBox figure kits, right? So they're going to be low part count, some of our lowest part counts. And they're easy to build because they're quite simple at the end of the day. Zvezda and Academy definitely down there as well, with pretty low part counts. And they go together without too much fuss. Hobby Boss getting closer to our challenging and higher part count section, but still in that same realm. And then up in our top right here, this is our busiest category, because there's definitely a whole trend in scale modeling of very complicated, challenging kits for more experienced builders, which is totally fine. It's a great place to be. I kind of prefer the Airfix Tamiya realm personally, just because I like kind of a relaxing build where I can spend more time on the painting and the weathering and all that jazz. And less time on the build itself, but whatever floats your boat, really. Kind of in our moderate tier here for challenging builds with moderate part counts, we got Meng, Asuka, Eduard, MiniArt, some great aircraft and AFVs from those companies. If you're looking for a great challenging aircraft kit, Eduard is a great, super place to look. And it's the same thing on the AFV side of things for tanks. Asuka, Meng, MiniArt, great options. With some really good full interior kits from MiniArt and Meng as well. Border and Rye Field, I think, are some fantastic manufacturers doing some really great stuff, newer ones to hit the market, and I can't wait to see what they continue to do as they grow and develop as companies. More difficult kits to put together just because of those higher part counts and the detail that comes with them, but they do go together very well. I want to iterate that. There's not a lot of problems with, you know, cleanup work you need to do on those two brands. Dragon and Trumpeter are over in the challenging section for both reasons, as we kind of listed in the beginning here. A lot of parts, and they can be a little fiddly. I don't think they go together super well, so that's kind of why they're so high in the challenging range. And they, as we mentioned, have a lot of parts. Takom is up here in the top right because it has a ton of parts, and it's difficult to put together just because there's just so much to them. They're practically like little running vehicles themselves, but that's why Takom's up there. So that's our kind of general graph. I hope you guys found that useful. If you agree with these decisions, or if you disagree with these decisions, let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think of this general rating here that we did. And hopefully this has been helpful. Excuse me. Hopefully this has been helpful to you guys. Whether you're a brand new scale modeler looking to get into the hobby, hopefully this can put you in the right wheelhouse for stuff that might work for you. Or you're kind of like in the middle of your scale modeling journey and you're looking for some new challenges and some new brands to check out. Hopefully that's helpful as well. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe right here to Sprues and Brews Scale Modeling. Like I said before, let me know what you think of the choices down in the comments below. And until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, cheers.